And what is going on, everybody? What is going on, everybody? My name is Jeff Lightsey Jr. with the Victor Formation Sports Show here on ESPN Louisville. And we've got a special guest joining us today. He's On3's college basketball analyst, and then really recruiting czar is what I say. The recruiting extraordinaire. Anything that goes through college basketball recruiting, you're going to hear about it typically first from none other than On3's Joe Tipton. Joe, how's it going today, sir?
I am doing great, Jeff. Appreciate you having me. Excited to talk some Louisville basketball.
Absolutely. And we're excited to hear from you, Joe. I got to come out the gate swinging, man. You are the go-to guy when it comes to releasing high-level top blue chip prospects, top 6, 8, 12, whatever. And it seems like over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks, there has been, whether it's Darren Peterson or others, that had that Louisville Cardinal logo bird on their finalist list. And a lot of visits are being set up to go to Louisville. Just from your perspective, being a national guy, what is the perception of Coach Kelsey and the Louisville Cardinals basketball team on the recruiting trail nationally?
I think there's a new level of excitement. Obviously, we all know that things didn't work out with Kenny Payne, but I think the success that Coach Kelsey had most recently at College of Charleston, there's a level of belief within the fan base, but then in the recruits as well, that Coach Kelsey is going to be able to flip this thing quickly. And I think it obviously started with the success that they've had in the transfer portal. I think that was key. Obviously, only took, I think, one high school guy, Kanai Roos, a very talented player. But then now I think they want to start kind of further building their culture and their continuity and just some more longer term guys in the high school ranks. So I think there's definitely a level of excitement for Louisville and Louisville recruiting that we haven't seen in quite some time.
Absolutely. Now, Joe, just from your perspective, I don't want to dump on too much on the last recruiting, on the last coaching staff, but just kind of give me like a compare and contrast, maybe what you were hearing from the previous staff as opposed to what high level recruits are saying now about this staff. Was there anything kind of being said? Because it didn't seem, at least from a bird's eye view, really locally, that there was a whole lot going on the trail. And now it seems like the trail has exploded for Louisville.
Yeah, I think with the previous coaching staff, I think a lot of it might have had to do with just, obviously we don't have to dive too deeply into it, but just their overall lack of success on the court. And the recruits see that. I mean, nobody really wants to sign up to go to a losing program. But I think now with Coach Kelsey, like I kind of said earlier, kind of reinvigorated things. And, it sounds like that that Louisville has, supplied the resources necessary in order to land some of these top recruits, whether it's the high school or the transfer portal as well. So we haven't really been able to see much proof to the pudding yet, obviously outside of their Bahamas trip, but there is just a level of belief. And I think that's what PK or Pat Kelsey's did at the College of Charleston, just kind of exciting a fan base, whether it's his use of social media in this day and age, which is very important for coaches to do. But there's just a new excitement, and specifically with the recruits.
Absolutely. Once again, we're talking to On3's Joe Tipton. Be sure to go follow Joe on all social media platforms as he puts out the latest and greatest on all things college basketball and college basketball recruiting. Now, Joe, you mentioned it. You just said resources when it comes to recruiting. What is that? Obviously, that means NIL and NIL opportunities. What does that look like? I'm going to just pick I don't know, Darren Peterson. What does something like that look like? What does he command out there when it comes to recruiting a player of his caliber?
I don't know specific numbers. I don't know if it's reached that level of conversation yet for the recruits, because I think or for Peterson specifically, because I think he's planning on making a decision in November. But I think for a guy like him, I mean, at the very minimum, 7 figures.
Okay.
It wouldn't surprise me if Shams or someone tweets that he's inked a deal for $2 million or $2.5 million with X school. So I think that's very much so achievable for him, being the top guard in the class. But I think anybody kind of in that top 10, you're looking at probably whether they'll accept a 7-figure offer, a $1 million offer, is another thing. But I think anybody in that top 10 of that 2025 class will have a $1 million offer.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's vital because that kind of peeks behind the curtain of what it looks like. And I mean, if you're worth it, like you're worth that to their program. Like, yeah, it costs you a million, 2 million, whatever. But the revenue that an athlete like that will bring into a program like a Louisville or Kansas or some of his other top schools, you're getting your bang for your buck. Joe, I want to continue on with the Louisville thing. What when it comes to like you're making these graphics, you're talking to these young men, their parents or their managers or whoever. Has it been surprising to you to see how many of these guys are putting Louisville in their finalist list? And if so, or if not, why so?
Actually, I'm not super surprised. It's kind of like Louisville's brand. We already know all about that. Like it's very much so, at the top of college basketball. And I think kind of the main thing associated with it is kind of this new shiny object. And
Mm,
it's, for some, it's exciting to, join something that's kind of getting off to a fresh start. But then also, I think it just comes back to the recruits that I speak to talk about, Pat Kelsey's energy and excitement and his personality, and that they're drawn to that. And then his assistant coaches do a great job of, keeping in contact with those recruits and making them feel like a priority as well. So honestly, it's not too much of a surprise. And then obviously the recruits all see the level of talent that they were able to bring in through the portal, and things of that nature. So I think it'll be pivotal how this season starts off with some of these top 2025 recruits. Some of them will wait until the spring to make a decision. Others will some of these. I mean, Louisville's going to get some high school guys now. Only time will tell who that'll be, but some of these guys are going to be signing up without actual on court, proof of the product. But it'll be interesting to see who they land.
absolutely. Now, Joe, just sticking with that, obviously you can't land everybody. Nobody does. Like it's just not how it works. It's not how the world of recruiting works. But if you had a guess, or if you, I'm not telling you to put in your On3 RPM crystal ball prediction, but some of the guys that you feel like Louisville is in a good position with, whether or not they land them, that's up to them, and that's up to the young man and the school. But who are some of the players that you know of, whether it's some of the guys that you've tweeted out about, or maybe some that you haven't, that you feel like Coach Kelsey and staff has made good inroads with and have a really good chance of landing?
Yeah, I would say Trey Singleton is a guy that comes to mind, that I would say that they're at the very, very top of his list.
Mhm.
Grew up just down the road from Louisville. He's a top 100 player for On3. Just kind of bloomed this past spring and summer. I think he's got a top 8, and believe he's got a visit to Louisville scheduled as well. Caden Magwood is another guy, a 4-star guard. He goes to Combine Academy in North Carolina, but he's originally from Louisville. I think they have a good of a chance as just about anybody. I would also think NC State is another program that's really kind of made him a priority as well. I like their chances as well. And then Shelton Henderson is a guy. I think you're looking at kind of a 3-horse race between Duke, Houston, and Louisville. Honestly, I would probably put Louisville in third place for that battle. But
Mhm.
depending on how things shake out, and of course, there's other, recruits on programs boards as well. And there will be a domino effect kind of later on, either this month and then especially in September, when a lot of these players start coming off the board. But I really think that Louisville is a sleeper for him as well. Davion Hannah is a guy, a top 30-ish player that's coming in to visit Louisville as well. Kind of too early to tell with him. I think he's got like maybe 7 official visits scheduled. I don't imagine him taking all of those, but he's a guy to keep in mind. And then London Jemison is another guy that's scheduled to visit Louisville, but some stiff competition there with schools like Kansas and Alabama. So I say all to say Trey Singleton, I feel like has a really good shot, a really good chance of ending up at Louisville. And then someone that I haven't talked about yet is Mikael Brown. I'm not sure if he's scheduled, or at least publicly scheduled, an official visit to Louisville. But I think they have a really good chance at landing him as well. He would probably be their first big splash in the class if they're able to land him. He's a 5-star point guard.
Wow. That's why we bring on Joe Tipton. That is right there giving us all the insight, whether it's public knowledge or not. You're hearing it here first from On3's own Joe Tipton. Now, Joe, I'll get you out of here because you really just made that. That was why people come and listen to you. That's why we follow you and turn on the notifications. Joe, I want to ask you this. Just from obviously, like you said, they haven't played any games that count. But from what you're hearing, whether it's on the recruiting trail all throughout college basketball, do you see with the because just from my perspective, it looks as if Coach Kelsey is doing all the right things, both on the trail, hitting like whether it's NBA top 100 camps or going to the Adidas 3SB, all these things. Do you see it to where Coach Kelsey with the Louisville brand, the Louisville resources, is he? Can you see him possibly being a guy who has a consistent top 10, top 5 recruiting class from the things that you're hearing?
I definitely think that there's a pretty good chance that ends up happening. Now, it might take a couple of years, or maybe even just a year, depending on how well the season goes. But I think that Louisville, just with their brand alone, and like I've mentioned multiple times, just Pat Kelsey's former success, I think players kind of look at Louisville and see what I can be there, and the history of that program as well. And it's kind of Louisville is one of those schools is like when they're good, they're going to be at the top of every player's list, just like Kentucky and Duke and Carolina programs like that are. Louisville has, that type of brand to where they're in a certain way, Louisville recruits itself. Obviously, the staff has to do their part as well, but I definitely think that Louisville, I wouldn't be surprised to see that over the next 3-4 seasons, Louisville being, like you said, a top 10 recruiting class, perhaps even a top 5 recruiting class, because they're after the right guys. And something that's underrated is just kind of what they were able to put together in the portal as well, because those are guys that, as fans have been able to notice and watch, is they can make even more of a significant impact than some of the high school guys, because they take a little bit longer at times. But I think they're definitely well on their way.
Absolutely. Now, Joe, one last question I want to ask you, as you brought up the transfer portal a couple of times during here. We know that the COVID guys are kind of, graduating out, matriculating out of college basketball. It's probably a couple of guys left that are like the 5th or 6th year playing. Just from your perspective, how do you think whether it's recruiting or just college basketball in general will change once the COVID guys are out? Do you think the transfer portal stabilizes a little more and guys focus back in on high school recruits, or do you think the transfer portal and it's how active it is here to stay?
I think it just really comes down to the preference of the coaching staff. For example, I was talking to one staff in the Big East, and they were like, "Yeah, we're just not really going to be recruiting high school guys. We like the transfers, and they're oftentimes better players and better impact players." So I think it really just, depends on, it seems like what Coach Kelsey wants to do is he wants to do a little bit of both. Obviously, in year one, you basically have to get everyone out of the portal,
Yeah.
which he did. I think he did a very good job of doing, just the roster that he was able to put together so quickly. But then also kind of looking ahead to seeing who they're bringing in terms of high school players. But I definitely think it'll be a mix for both, just because you never know who's going to transfer out, who's going to have a phenomenal year and declare for the NBA draft,
Mm.
or even who doesn't live up to expectations. And you can bring in a transfer every offseason, or a handful of transfers for that matter, to kind of help bolster that roster. But I do think with the COVID year now gone, it will kind of stabilize the portal as well. But I still think there'll be programs in college basketball that, that only take 1 or 2 high school guys every year. There'll still be programs to take 3 or 4, like Marquette. They only recruit high school guys.
Mm.
And they have like a 3-man class in 2025 already, when some programs don't have a single commitment. So it just depends from program to program. But I think Louisville will do a little bit of both.
Absolutely. That is Joe Tipton from On3, the recruiting extraordinaire, covering college basketball. As you hear, he's talking to staffs, right? Like Joe was plugged in all throughout college basketball. Joe, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speaking with us. And this won't be the last time, Joe. We'll have you back, man. As long as you allow us, we will have you back to talk all things, whether it's recruiting, college basketball in general, because we know you do more than just recruiting, but that is something that a lot of people come to you for. So, Joe, thank you so much for today.
Absolutely, Jeff. Looking forward to next time.
Absolutely. That is Joe Tipton. My name is Jeff Lightsey Jr. We'll see you guys next time.